Derby County have been drawn against Manchester City for the fourth round of the FA Cup. Should they be able to beat Leyton Orient away from home this Tuesday evening? Now, in my opinion, this changes absolutely nothing in the way Derby County approach the game. There should be no changes in mentality, no changes in mindset. Obviously, they'll be a little bit more amped up for the game, knowing that that tie is around the corner at Pride Park Stadium if they were to get through it. But ultimately, I don't think it should change team selection. I don't think it should change the players who are involved. Now, obviously, Derby County do have the luck of the draw that they had their game postponed, which we spoke about in a video yesterday, which now leads to this discussion of a range of fans saying that Derby County should change their approach to this game to make sure that they are victorious. But in my opinion, I don't believe anything should change. Whatever was going to happen on Saturday, Paul Warne was never going to set out for Derby County to lose. He was never going to throw a game away. Now, this just makes it even clearer that Derby County won't throw the game away. We know that we're going to see some first team players on Tuesday evening. Now, the interesting thing for me will be which ones. Derby County could potentially be handed a triple boost heading into this one, with the likes of Erin Cashin, Ryan Niambi and Ibu Adams all set to return from injury and be back in training today as I'm recording this on the 12th of January. And for me, it's a very interesting discussion that has now been raised, because obviously you've got the prize fund, you've got the gate receipts and a potential fourth round winners prize fund as well. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't think the prize money ultimately is that much or will make a massive difference for Derby County. I think over the course of the two ties and with gate receipts, I think Derby could earn between £700,000 and £1 million. I'll put all my workings out on the screen for you, because it is going to be difficult for Derby County to get through this Leyton Orient tie to start off with. I've spoke about it a few times already. They're in some hot form and they're going to be just as amped up for this game as we are, and it's going to be an interesting one to look at and discuss. Now, obviously, the joys of Paul Warne facing up against Pep Guardiola in the dugouts at Pride Park Stadium is going to be absolutely phenomenal should we get through the tie. But I also think that you have that discussion there of, is it going to be a confidence drainer? We saw Man City the other day, they put 8 past Salford, and don't get me wrong, that wasn't even a starting City team, it was pretty much second string. And I like Manchester City. I think they do things really well. I think, yes, there's a lot of caveats with their current court cases, but it's one of those for me where they've been dominant for years. Pep Guardiola's been at the helm for years. You've got the shining light now of Erling Haaland. You've got Phil Foden coming through. You've got a load of youngsters coming through as well. The likes of Cole Palmer, who have moved on to pastures new. And for me, this Derby County versus City tie would just epitomise the footballing pyramid. One club who went bust for overspending who nearly went bust a few years ago for overspending, and another club who are currently going through the process of potentially being charged for fraudulent activities and not doing certain things properly. Now, for me, the big discussion around these two games is purely going to be prize money. Now, spoke just earlier about how much it could be, potentially up to £1 million. Now, the way the prize money works is it's £115,000 for winning round 3, and then I think it's £150,000 for winning round 4, and then per game you split gate receipts 45% and 10% to the FA. So you expect Derby County versus Manchester City would potentially be a sellout. So you're looking at what, around 32,500 to 32,000 tickets sold. Say at an average price of 20 quid, you're looking at around £400,000 for Derby County going into the coffers. And if they were to beat Manchester City in that game, which obviously isn't impossible, highly unlikely, but not impossible, you've then got the extra 150 grand, which puts you on 550, and the 115 grand from round 3, which puts you on around £700,000. Now, that is just rough estimates. I believe the tickets, we don't know how much ticket prices are going to be. You can't work out an average of ticket prices until you know what the prices are going to be, and we're not going to know that for a couple of weeks. And we've obviously got to get through the tie first. So it is going to be a very interesting one. Now, I don't think anything should change heading into the Leyton Orient game. I think any academy players that were supposed to play should still play. I think any first team players that were supposed to be involved should still be involved. Now, the discussion is going to be around Cashin, Ibu Adams and Ryan Niambi. 3 players who, in my opinion, just keep out of this game. In my opinion, they can play when we play City in a few weeks if we get through. Obviously, I have to add that if, because I don't want to sort of be disrespectful towards Leyton Orient. They're still a fairly decent side in League One at the moment, putting in some really good performances. Now, I personally wouldn't put them in the squad, whatever the situation is. Maybe have them on the bench, potentially, but I wouldn't want to take that opportunity away from those youngsters, which is like what I spoke about yesterday in that video. Now, we have got other videos coming up on the channel over the course of this week, talking about potential signings and budget discussions and things like that. And I think that this potential prize pool could increase our chances in the transfer window? Probably, maybe. I think it's hard to really put a figure on what Derby would actually do, because yes, you can talk about gate receipts and stuff like that, but the game isn't until the 8th of February, that week, sort of thing. So it'd be one of those where David Clowes wouldn't really know what we're getting. It would be a rough estimate. And is he really going to want to chuck, say, £1 million in, and then we end up only making 600 grand, and he then loses 400k? Who actually knows? I'm not entirely sure on that side of things. Now, it is going to be an interesting one. It's going to be a really, really interesting one for Paul Warne going into Tuesday, because he will obviously say, whatever happens post-match, he'll say, we didn't change anything because of the City tie, blah-de-blah, but realistically, I think things will have changed. I think there'll be a different viewpoint. The team will probably be in the team hotel tomorrow evening. I bet they'll travel down Monday afternoon, which will be obviously big talking point on the coach for those players and staff about the potential of welcoming Manchester City to Pride Park Stadium. And we saw it a few years ago, and this is one of my caveats that I've spoke about over on Twitter, is Max Bird. We played West Ham United in the FA Cup, I think it must have been the FA Cup, a few years ago, towards the back end of January at Pride Park. I think we was on about a 20-game unbeaten run. I think we'd won something like 15 out of 20. We lost Max Bird in that game for, I think it was around 6 to 7 weeks, and our form just completely dropped off. We went from being third in the league, 5 points off automatic promotion, third or fourth, 5 points off, to just outside the playoffs by the time, well, I think we were still inside when Max Bird returned, but then once he was back in the flow of things, we fell out of the playoffs and obviously stayed out of them that season. So it's one of those for me where you don't want to take those risks with those players potentially coming in from injuries, the likes of Ozo, Niambi, Cashin and Adams. Now, I think the only one that's maybe likely to feature that wouldn't have featured at the weekend is probably Ibu, because his was a concussion. It wasn't a muscle injury or ligament damage or anything like that, whereas that's what it is with Cashin and Niambi and Ozo. So it's a very interesting talking point. You don't want to lose any of your key players for a cup tie that could potentially earn you £1 million, and then lose out on survival in the Championship that is worth £10 million in TV deals alone. So it's a very, very interesting concept to talk about. It's a very, very big cup tie in the concept of Derby County, because Manchester City, obviously champions of the Premier League, they won the treble, and did they win the quadruple a couple of years ago or last year or something? And you just have that conversation where you're like, you want to play your best players in that game because you want to see how you compare, but ultimately you know it's going to be a hiding. Man City will find a way, just like West Ham found a way that day, just like United found a way a few years ago, and like Liverpool did in penalties just a few years ago, but obviously they played a lot more youth academy products and things like that, but obviously needed to dip into their bench of superstars. So this fourth round tie could be absolutely magnificent for Derby County. It could be a huge one revenue wise, but obviously for me the caveats have to be, we still need to focus on the league. We need to focus on obviously the discussions with going forward transfer window, and we need to make sure that our full focus is on staying in the Championship rather than potentially a cup run. I wouldn't mind if we had 5, 6, 7 more points on the board, so you've got a little bit more room to play with. But we don't have that. We don't have that luxury. So it's going to be interesting to see how Paul Warren plays it out. We obviously play Leyton Orient tomorrow as you're watching this video. It's going to be interesting to see how that one goes. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. Hit the subscribe button if you have not done so already. Hit the like button as well. Turn on the notification bell, and I'll catch you in my next video.